corners of Bulwer and other parts of the Marlborough Sounds and so on, because these standards need to rise.
Chris Finlayson, thank you very much for joining us on the panel this afternoon. Kia ora.
Yeah.
And Lana Searle, thank you.
Thank you very much, Karen. It's been a pleasure. Thanks, Chris.
See you later. Bye.
We're coming up to the news at 5, as I said, and then Checkpoint with Lisa Owen. Thank you very much for joining us on the panel today. Enjoy the rest of your day. Kia pai te tuanga o te rā. I think I said that okay. I'll practice for tomorrow. Good afternoon.
Te whakarongo mai koe ki te reo irirangi o Aotearoa. This is Checkpoint on RNZ National. I'm Lisa Owen. E haere nei, there's serious concerns for a man and 3 young children missing in a remote part of Waikato. Search teams are scouring beach and bush for the group that hasn't been seen since Saturday. Tourist towns brace for the prospects of school holidays without lucrative Auckland visitors. So what's stopping officials just moving the brake? Forget Mr Whippy, here comes our very own Jabba the Bus. The COVID vaccination van is coming to town. So how's about money for jab? One big employer's paying a bonus to workers who get immunised. And has something else been spreading during the pandemic? Dishonesty. The number of university cheats has skyrocketed.
Ahi Mārie, RNZ News at 5, ko Sarah Thompson tōku ingoa. Searchers are combing the remote western Waikato coast for a missing family of 4. The police now say they're seriously concerned for 34-year-old Thomas Phillips and his children Ember, Maverick and Jada, aged from 5 to 8. Area Commander Will Loughran says they were last seen near the coast at Marukopa on Saturday, and a car being used by Mr Phillips was found further south at Kiritehere Beach the following day.
This is out of character for the family. And you're right, this is day 4, so that's why you'll see a significant amount of resource that's being put into the search and rescue operation to bring Thomas and the kids home.
The Eagle helicopter, a Coast Guard plane and 3 drones are being used as part of an extensive land, sea and air search. A woman who sought shelter on a bus after being stabbed during the Linmore terror attack has thanked those who helped her in the minutes after she fled the scene. Amy Williams reports.
Susan Madron, who's now recovering at home, says the bravery and courage of those who helped the victims in the aftermath of the September 3rd attack is commendable. In a statement provided by the police, she thanks the woman outside the supermarket who tried to stem her bleeding hip and the bus driver who allowed her onto a parked bus. She says she felt safe and supported until the ambulance arrived. Ms Madron also thanks the police, who she says have provided ongoing support to her husband and 4 children.
The police have also praised as nothing short of heroic the actions of a man who ran towards the Linmore attacker and distracted him. They say Rodney Khan was not stabbed but was tackled by the offender when he intervened in an attempt to prevent a woman from being attacked. He is at home recovering from a dislocated shoulder. 3 of the victims remain in Auckland City Hospital in a stable condition. A 19-year-old charged with threatening to kill non-Muslims will keep his identity secret for now after an appearance in the North Shore District Court. Arrested last week, days after the Linmore attack, the man made his 2nd court appearance this afternoon. Katie Todd reports.
The defendant is accused of threatening to kill members of the Auckland community who were non-Muslims between July 13th and September 7th. He also faces 2 charges of supplying an objectionable publication in August. Today he appeared in court via audio-visual link from custody, dressed in full PPE. Judge Claire Bennett said interim name suppression could continue until another court appearance on Thursday next week.
A South Auckland councillor and a disability community advocate are backing a government plan to have vaccination buses roaming Auckland from Thursday in a bid to boost inoculation rates. They say the buses will help reach people who cannot travel to a vaccination centre. Papakura councillor Daniel Newman is warmly in favour of the plan.
In streets and neighbourhoods in South Auckland, we have a lot of people who are not vaccinated. We're working to get them vaccinated through drive-thrus, walk-in and through vaccination events within our community, but we have to ensure that this vaccine is dispersed as widely as possible.
Disability advocate Barry de Geest says the buses will help those who don't have a car, cannot drive and cannot afford a taxi. 2 people have been arrested after a supermarket security guard was assaulted at a South Auckland supermarket. The police say a woman refused to wear a face covering at the Takanini Pack and Save and then became aggressive. She left the store but returned with 2 men and punched the guard, whom the men then chased with weapons. A 26-year-old woman has been charged with assault and issued with an infringement for failing to wear a face covering. A 33-year-old Black Power member has been charged with assault with a weapon. Moving now into sports news, Wallabies fly half Quade Cooper's hopes of acquiring Australian citizenship are finally set to be realised thanks to a change in eligibility rules. The New Zealand-born Cooper moved to Australia as a teenager and earned 71 test caps, but his citizenship applications have been repeatedly declined. His starring role in the Wallabies' 28-26 win over world champions South Africa at the weekend triggered further calls for the government to grant him citizenship. Authorities have recently altered rules that would ease restrictions on overseas-based applicants, which is a relief to Cooper.
There was a lot of pressure from the Australian public, the media. I'm just truly grateful for that support. Like, there's more to being Australian than just a piece of paper, so it'll be a little bit of a cherry on top, but it's not over the line yet.
A 17-strong New Zealand team has been named for the Road Cycling World Championships in Belgium later this month, but several leading riders are either injured or unavailable. Tokyo Olympians George Bennett and Patrick Bevan and fellow World Tour riders Dion Smith and Georgia Williams are all missing. The squad is headed by Niamh Fisher-Black, who is the leading young rider on the Women's World Tour. And finally, 3 goals in 6 minutes have given Everton a 3-1 win over Burnley in their English Premier League football match. The win moves Everton to 4th on the table, while Burnley remain 18th. And that is the news and sport.
Pushing the vaccine message in Auckland.
What we're trying to continue to drive people through is things like those drive-through clinics, those walk-in clinics, places where we can do a large number.
But what about home delivery?
People have talked about music to tell them, like in Mr. Whippy band, that we're coming down the street.
And just adding to this morning's mix, potty training cows.
The bottom line is the cows are as quick at learning toileting as the fastest kids.
There's no bull here. Morning Report, weekdays from 6 on RNZ National.
Te reo irirangi o Aotearoa, funded through New Zealand On Air. Now the short forecast from Met Service to midnight Rāapa Wednesday. Northland to Coromandel Peninsula and Bay of Plenty. Periods of rain with heavy falls possible in Northland tomorrow evening. Waikato to Taranaki, including the central high country. Fine spells today with remaining rain in Waikato and Taupo clearing this afternoon. Periods of rain tomorrow. For Gisborne and Hawke's Bay, it'll be periods of rain, especially in Gisborne. For Whanganui to Wellington, also Wairarapa. Fine spells with a few showers in Wellington and Wairarapa. Cloud increasing tomorrow and rain developing everywhere by the evening. For Marlborough, Nelson and Buller to Fiordland, a few showers about Marlborough and southern Fiordland. Fine elsewhere, but isolated showers about Norwest Nelson and Buller this afternoon or evening. Canterbury will see fine spells with a few showers clearing tonight. Otago and Southland will be partly cloudy with isolated showers retreating to the south coast this afternoon. And the Chatham Islands will see a few showers. That concludes the short forecast from Met Service to midnight Rāapa Wednesday. It's 7 minutes past 5.
Nā mihi Sarah, tēnā koutou katoa no mai haere mai ki checkpoint te tēnei rā, ko Lisa Owen tēnei. A major search is on at a remote and rugged settlement on the west coast of the North Island for a man and his 3 children. Police say they have serious concerns for Otorohanga man Thomas Phillips, who's gone missing in King Country. Searchers are looking for the 34-year-old as well as 5-year-old Ember Phillips, 6-year-old Maverick Callum Phillips and 8-year-old Jada Jin. Police say it is out of character for Mr Phillips to go missing and they are scouring the coast, small settlements and going door to door looking for the family. Andrew McRae reports.
Thomas Phillips and the 3 children haven't been seen since Saturday.
The last sighting of the group was in Marakopa on Saturday the 11th of September. The vehicle used by Thomas was found by a family member at the beach at Kiritahiri on Sunday, the 12th of September.
Waikato West Area Commander Inspector Will Loughran says Phillips lives between Marakopa and Otorohanga and works on the family farm. He and his children were reported missing yesterday, sparking a search and rescue on the region's remote west coast. He says police are treating the disappearance very seriously.
This is out of character for the family, and you're right, this is day 4, so that's why you'll see a significant amount of resource that's being put into the search and rescue operation to bring Thomas and the kids home.
Inspector Loughran says a family member last spoke to Thomas Phillips on the family farm at Marakopa on Saturday evening. He says there were no issues raised at the time.
Family didn't realise that Thomas and the kids were missing until the vehicle was discovered on Sunday on the beach, and at that point family became concerned and then approached police on Monday morning, notifying us of what had occurred in terms of the locating of the vehicle. From that point on, police immediately launched a search and rescue operation which is ongoing.
He says police are speaking with the extended family.
Our initial inquiries have identified that Thomas and the kids were at the family farm in Marakopa, and that's part of our inquiries we're making at the moment to establish what was said, what the intentions of Thomas was in terms of his movements later in that day and the coming days.
When Mr. Phillips' car was found on the beach, waves were crashing into it.
At that point, members of the community went and retrieved the car and then notified family that they'd located the car, which was part of the family being made aware of the fact that there was some concerns about where Thomas and the kids were.
Inspector Loughran says there's no suggestion of foul play. The Mayor of Waitomo District, John Robertson, says locals are worried about the man and the 3 young children. Mr. Robertson says the family are from King Country and there's a lot of anxiety there about their safety.
People know the family, so we're just hoping for the best outcomes on this. It's been a really tough night, storm-wise, and so it is a tough environment on the west coast as the search goes on.
Inspector Loughran says the family is naturally upset about the disappearance.
What we do in police really well is we wrap ourselves around family and support them. They've got a family liaison officer that is directly feeding back live updates to them as to how the search is progressing.
He says police are committed to bringing home Thomas Phillips and the 3 children.
It is almost 11 minutes past 5 and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Kia ora rawatu mo te whakarongo mai. Thanks for listening. E haere ake nei, coming up on the program, the company offering bonuses to workers who get double vaxxed by a deadline. The testing and vaccination blitz is on in Auckland, with the Prime Minister urging people in the city to bring their vaccinations forward. She's urging people to roll up to drive-thrus to get their dose as soon as they can, while promising the wheels are in motion, quite literally, for a vaccination clinic near you. Nick Trubridge reports.
Mr Whippy is coming to town in a bid to lift the vaccination rates, especially in Auckland. Buses will be rolled out across the northern region from Thursday. Loaded on board doses of Pfizer, taking the vaccines to the people.
The initial plan is to take them into areas where we know vaccination numbers have been low or people have not been able to access vaccination services as easily. The aim is to increase the network from an expected 6 on Thursday to 12 over the coming weeks. A huge thanks to Auckland Airport and Bus Travel New Zealand, who have supplied buses for this work.
And if the figures at one Otara vaccination centre are anything to go by, mobile vaccinations are desperately needed.
Yeah, so we've done, so far, we've done about 1,400 people over the 4 days, the last 4 days, but even that's quite slow for us.
That's South Seas Healthcare's Liz Tiumalu, who told Checkpoint numbers through its Otara Road vaccination centre are starting to wane. She says this could be because there are more places than ever to get vaccinated, but there may be other, far less positive reasons.
Yeah, I think it's just people maybe not booking for some reason, and there could be a number of issues. Maybe the motivation. Also, we're just finding, because there have been a lot of pop-ups in different regions, so some people have gone early, which is great, but unfortunately their names are still on our list.
There's also some vaccine hesitancy this community is trying hard to get on top of.
We've even had one young lady stand in line and then get a text from her sister to not get it, and then she quickly got out of the line. So yeah, we're seeing stuff like that. Even couples, like we had our husband come through with his wife. The wife said she'll get her husband to do it first, and if she sees that he's okay, then she'll come and get her one.
I take a drive from Otara to Manurewa, where the vast majority of locals spoken to from a distance say the vaccine is a must.
Yes, we got it when it first came out.
First shot or second shot?
Both shots. So we took our first one, and then 2 weeks after that we did our next one. So I have a family of 5.
Good for New Zealand, good for the community, for people.
And what about the PM's plea, Jacinda Ardern's call to action for Aucklanders to bring bookings forward if they can find a spot? Well, that's confusing some here in Manurewa.
No, there's been no advice given to when we should have our second vaccination, only the advice given from our first. So, but they've advising on television that 6 weeks apart is better.
As for the goal of having as many Aucklanders as possible vaccinated by Sunday,
it's going to be a miracle, but I don't think that will happen. You know, it's going to have a big push. You got to do something really to push people to do it. But I don't see that happen unless it's a miracle from heaven.
So are vaccine incentives the answer? I put that to Wiri Business Association Chairman Ben Robinson.
Incentive schemes there may or may not work yet. No one really knows. South Auckland businesses that I'm in touch with haven't really discussed incentives at all for vaccination, but they'll do what it takes to get their businesses operating again, and that lockdown currently provides quite an incentive to get vaccinated.
Back on the streets of Manurewa, the incentive idea goes down a treat. But who should pay?
Oh, it'll probably be a good idea, but should employers pay for it? Or should we do pay tax? A working person pays tax for things like this, so really the government should be funding.
But vaccine hesitancy among some isn't going anywhere, incentive or not.
If I got a choice whether to keep my job, if I didn't get a vaccination, I'll probably leave.
And so begins the week of the vaccine. The next 7 days crucial for the elimination strategy and crucial for Auckland.
It is 15 minutes past 5. Kia amo tonu mai. You're listening to Checkpoint on RNZ National. The school holidays are just around the corner, but some parts of the country are expecting to miss out on an influx of visitors from Auckland. Lockdown meant Wanaka lost weeks of prime ski season and is now preparing to miss out on the Auckland dollar if the super city stays grounded. Our reporter Tess Brunton and cameraman Nathan McKinnon have been speaking to locals.
At this time of the year, Lake Wanaka cruisers would usually be taking guests out onto the water 3 to 4 times a day. Its owner and skipper Tim Cuthbertson says they haven't even done that many since reaching level 2, and he feels like they're in limbo.
Well, it's all up in the air. We don't really know what to do. I guess, the unpredictability of it is the hardest part. We'd love to be able to get staff back on, get new people trained up and get rolling, but of course you just can't do that with the uncertainty. I think there's a lot of uncertainty from the customer's point of view as well. People don't know whether to book. People are certainly not booking ahead very much.
While it's a tight-knit, resilient community, he says people are feeling the strain of COVID and the loss of international visitors.
But it is wearing people down. You can just feel there is, the wear factor is starting to kick in, a little bit of fatigue.
He's hopeful the upcoming school holidays will provide a boost. Wanaka Lakeview Holiday Park General Manager Natalie Ward says lockdown was particularly hard this time around.
I think because of the shortness of the extension, so being only a week at a time, not knowing, is actually the planning is very difficult. And of course, a lot of events are waiting on what they can do under certain levels, which means people aren't wanting to book or confirm very far in advance. So it's quite a struggle.
Wanaka's historic rental shortages haven't gone away. She says about 80% of their guests are short-term workers. Usually they'd be well outnumbered by visitors. Hayley Hobson is the Director of Drive Accounting and Drive Marketing in Wanaka. She says it's not just tourism which has been hit hard.
But also people like builders. They're finding they're not getting the supplies from Auckland. Other people as well, florists, where plants come from Auckland. So all those delays from Auckland not being open has knock-on effects to us as well, not just the tourists.
Last year, she says businesses received the wage subsidy within a couple of days, but Ms Hobson says it's a more complicated and time-consuming process this time around. She says about 10% of her clients haven't received the subsidy from the lockdown and they're struggling. Ignite Wanaka General Manager Naomi Lindsay says some owner-operators have had to work 7 days just to get by and can't afford to pay the shortfall in the wage subsidy.
They're just not in a position this time around, and so that's really tough on everybody. And what happens is staff members can't survive, so they leave town. And then what happens when we get to summer, and hopefully we're back at level 1, and businesses can't find staff again. So there's a real concern around the knock-on effect of this lockdown for summer and autumn as well.
Ms Lindsay hopes level 1 isn't far away, as the 50-person rule is hitting venues hard.
But at least by operating at level 1, they can maximise the business that's there and not turn people away, because you imagine being a business owner and being able to open and having to turn away business at the door.
Wanaka businesses say widespread vaccination and Aucklanders being able to travel again would be the best case scenario for now.
One of the country's largest steel building product providers is reinforcing its own COVID defences, paying a bonus to workers if they get fully vaccinated. Steel and Tube is offering workers $150 in cash or a KiwiSaver contribution if they get both jabs by mid-November. Well, joining me now is the CEO, Mark Malpass. Mark, tell us why you decided to go with an incentive.
Yeah, hi Lisa. Look, we believe a fully vaccinated workforce, will create a far safer workforce, and in terms of for both, our employees, also our customers and the suppliers that we work with. So we've got a real interest in getting the vaccination rates up as quickly as we can to play our part in accelerating that uptake.
So why do you reckon it needs $150 to get them moving?
Oh, look, we'd much rather create an incentive for people to encourage that. So we're offering $150 in either cash or a KiwiSaver contribution or Steel and Tube shares for employees that are vaccinated by mid-November.
How did you settle on the value? What did you think would be a motivating number, if you see what I mean?
Yeah, that's a good question. We just felt, 150 is a reasonably, significant amount, and it was enough to encourage people to get vaccinated, and so we felt that was striking the right balance.
And you've set a deadline to get the bonus or the shares or the KiwiSaver contribution. They have to be double vaccinated by mid-November. How did you settle on the date too?
Yeah, look, we felt there's enough stretch in that to be reasonable. We really are just trying to encourage people as quickly as we possibly can, because we know that, having a fully vaccinated team just mean that we're more resilient going forward. So, we felt that gives enough time for people to, get organised, and particularly for those in Auckland to take advantage of the lockdown and get themselves out and vaccinated.
What do you reckon stopping them at the moment from just doing it off their own bat?
Oh, I'm not sure. I mean, I think most people are endeavouring to vaccinate, but again, we're just wanting to accelerate that because we obviously want to ensure that our company can keep operating and to do our part for, a restart and, to get back to normal business trading as quickly as we possibly can. We're also wanting to do our part in ensuring that the vulnerable, have reduced risks and that there's less pressure on the health system. And so by vaccinating our team, we felt there's a good way that we can encourage that and move ahead quickly.
So how many workers have you got, and what do you know about their vaccination status now?
Yeah, look, we've got about 850 FTEs in the business at the moment. We don't actually measure the vaccination rates at the moment, so I can't give you an accurate figure, but I would have thought somewhere around the 20 to 30% would be vaccinated at this point. The key here is obviously, people will have to tell us they've been vaccinated and got both jabs to get the $150. So we'll have a good read on that, and no doubt, and shortly. But we're certainly seeing a very strong interest and uptake from employees to get on and get vaccinated.
What would you like to hit? Have you got yourself a target?
Oh, we'd love to be at 100% by mid-November, Lisa, and I'm sure we'll get very close to that.
Has the company got a policy on new employees and whether you're going to require them to be vaccinated?
No, we don't.
Is that something you're looking at, or how are you going to deal with it?
Look, I think it will certainly become part of the currency for people going forward. But being vaccinated will be important. As we move into an environment, hopefully without lockdowns going forward, that'll be pretty critical.
Yeah, because you talk about resilience a bit, right? So this is in part about making sure that you can still operate. Of course, you're a business. So, how is life been going for you guys at level 4? You got a lot of depots in Auckland.
Yeah, look, it's tough. The economy has certainly been fairly robust leading up into the lockdowns and very busy construction, manufacturing, infrastructure sectors. So, it really is. It's a little depressing to have to sort of pull the brakes on for a little while. But I think the team here, certainly the folk outside of Auckland, are all working very hard. For those in Auckland, we are obviously operating under level 4, where we can only supply our essential services customers, which works on our distribution sides of our business, but all of our manufacturing is currently not operational. The sites are closed, other than one exception that we've had for our colour-coated roofing businesses, which was approved last Friday.
Yeah, so what does that mean for supplies? Where are you sitting for what you've got on in stock, and what does that mean in terms of knock-on for construction?
Yeah, sure. Look, it's many of the manufacturers in Auckland are supplying. Most of the country is supplied out of Auckland manufacturing hubs. So it's just how the most firms operate and distribute through the country. So, it is having an effect on many customers outside of Auckland, where they're starting to now run dry on critical products, all things from steel reinforcing mesh used in foundations through to roofing products that are critical to for builders in the residential space.
Is there anything in particular that you're short on?
Look, not in particular, but we're obviously working with the MBIE and officials around collaboratively working through just which manufacturing facilities are really critical to be opened up. And as I mentioned, we're very fortunate that MBIE had allowed us to open up our roofing function last Friday, which has meant that we're able to get those products through the system to the rest of the country.
Yeah, and I'm sure you are grateful for that. But do the rules make sense to you in terms of manufacturing versus other services that may be able to operate at level 4 when, you're potentially supplying huge construction and infrastructure projects? Do the rules make sense for you as it stands at the moment?
Oh, look, I think we're all working fairly collaboratively here. Obviously there's Ministry of Health challenges that, nobody wants to be passing the virus through the system. So I think everybody's, acting very maturely in terms of how we're working through this and making sure that the critical products are opening up. I mentioned roofing. There's other products that we're working with MBIE on, and hopefully, in coming days, we'll be able to start supplying them as well. So I think,
Which ones are those, Mark? Which ones are you hoping to get up and running?
Oh, look, there's many products. Everything from, coil processed products, purlings, things like that are used in apartment developments, reinforcing mesh that's used in foundations, roofing substrate materials. There's a bunch of products that are critical that will start running short, if the level 4 lockdown is extended for a longer duration.
So are you in talks to get the go-ahead for manufacturing of those products at the most restricted of COVID levels?
Yeah, look, I think all, key manufacturers in Auckland will be engaging with MBIE fairly constructively at the moment.
Hey, are you doing any kind of surveillance testing or involved in any surveillance testing programs?
No, we're not. We're certainly interested in getting involved, and we've been talking with, or just initiating conversations with South Seas Healthcare and others to look at doing exactly that.
And would you encourage other companies to do what you're doing, this bonus payment?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the more companies that can get on board and get their teams vaccinated as quickly as possible is really, we're doing our bit to help, New Zealand get back to business as quickly as we can, get back to normal trading and hopefully be able to reopen our borders.
Really appreciate your time. That is Mark Malpas, who is the boss at Steel and Tube. And as mentioned, they're giving $150 in cash or KiwiSaver contributions or shares in the company for people who are double jabbed by a deadline of mid-November. Homai o Whakaro, would love to know your thoughts on that one. Nō reira anei na kaupapa mo te hōtaka nei. Should big companies, should they offer an incentive? And if so, what? What should it be? What seems fair, or does that mean people who've got the vax already miss out? Let us know your thoughts. Pātui mai, you can text me 2101, tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ, or you can email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. Online learning at universities has become a loophole for students to cheat, with cases skyrocketing from last year's lockdown. Figures obtained under the Official Information Act, released to Checkpoint, show a 458% increase in cheating at Lincoln University last year. That's almost 5 times higher than before the pandemic. And as Louise Tanuth reports, lecturers say the issue is far worse than the figures show, as lockdowns disrupt face-to-face teaching.
The figures show 5 out of 8 universities had an increase in cheating last year. At Waikato University, there was a 134% increase in academic misconduct in 2020 compared to 2019. Wellington University had a 180% increase, Massey 110%, University of Canterbury had a 204% increase, and Lincoln University's levels were nearly 5 times as high, with a whopping 458% increase. Dr. Myra Williamson is a senior law lecturer at Waikato University. She's been grappling with student cheating for years, but says COVID's left them with a huge problem on their hands.
It was such a rush to the online space for obvious reasons. We had to go and do all of our assessment online, but we haven't really put in place the infrastructure, if you like, the learning infrastructure to be able to maintain academic integrity in that space.
She's taught both overseas and in New Zealand and says it's shocking how simple it is to cheat. She says she even tested out purchasing an essay herself.
I mean, it was extremely easy just to make contact with a website and to tell them what I needed and when I needed it by and how much I was prepared to pay and what mark I wanted.
She says the results are just the tip of the iceberg and hopes that other options for examinations can be explored, like oral exams for law students. Her concerns are echoed by a mathematics and science staff member at Massey University, who doesn't wish to be named. He says since lockdown last year, his students have been cheating using an online file sharing service.
You pay a monthly fee, you actually submit the specific question you want the answer to. The contractor in India writes the answer for you immediately, like within 15 minutes. The question and the answer is then posted publicly for all the other members of the website to see. So not just the student who posted the question, but any other student in the class who looks for it.
How bad are we talking? I mean, is it something you're constantly dealing with?
Yes, constantly. So basically all of the will be happening in all of the classes.
That's backed up by research from the Imperial College of London, which found a 200% increase in requests for help with exam-style questions since the COVID pandemic started. While the cheating is always investigated, he says the system doesn't work for modern cheating.
But then there has to be an inquiry, like a disciplinary inquiry, and then that's extremely time-consuming and slow. And sometimes it's difficult to get proof, so in that case the student would typically be let off.
He wants to see more dialogue with students about the consequences for cheating and to explore things like browser monitors and cameras, but admits these pose privacy issues. But he wants something done before the problem gets worse.
Could actually get worse, could start to undermine the whole system.
Auckland University is remaining online for the rest of the year, but no one was available to be interviewed. The Tertiary Institute of Education and University Council also declined to comment or to be interviewed by Checkpoint.
And that piece was from Louise Tanuth. I'm interested in your feedback on that one too. Homai o Whakaro. Text me on 2101 or tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ. Is cheating really widespread? How's it being done? Which universities are we talking about? Let us know. Love to hear from you. On the subject of vaccine incentives, got a bit of feedback here. It says, give them a lotto ticket for a jab, each person in a vehicle. Cheers, says Matt. The vaccination is free. It protects a person and their loved ones from death and disability. Do people really need to be paid? Yeah, well, I would have asked that question too, but if you look at vaccination rates for yesterday, there were only 55,000 people who were vaccinated. So I think, well, do we need an incentive to get more people moving? Dave from Waiheke says, no, companies shouldn't be incentivising this. It's not their role to be actively involved in people's personal medical choices, especially if they are not on the front line. Thanks for your feedback. Kia ora e te iwi e haere nei I a checkpoint. How are Auckland parents coping with the never-ending lockdown and the dreaded homeschooling? And why can't we just move the school holidays? And the spread of dishonesty during the pandemic. Homai o whakaaro on anything you've heard on the programme this evening. We would love your feedback. Text us 2101. Tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ, or you can flick us an email, checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. It is time now for the headlines. Ko Sarah anō tēnei.
Kia ora, Lisa. RNZ News headlines, ko Sarah Thompson tōko ingoa. An extensive air, land and sea search is underway as police comb the remote western Waikato coast for a missing family of 4. The police now say they're seriously concerned for 34-year-old Thomas Phillips and his children Ember, Maverick and Jada, aged from 5 to 8. Area Commander Will Loughran says they were last seen on Saturday and a car being used by Mr Phillips was found the following day. The Eagle helicopter, a Coast Guard plane and 3 drones are being used while police are going door to door in the search. Steel and Tube's chief executive says offering employees a bonus to get double vaccinated against COVID will ensure the company can provide a safe workplace. The steel building product provider is offering workers $150 cash or a KiwiSaver contribution if they get both jabs by mid-November. The company's boss, Mark Malpass, has told Checkpoint that having a fully vaccinated workforce makes the company more resilient during the pandemic. He says it will also risk harm in the community and the stress on the health system. Meanwhile, the government is rolling out vaccination buses in Auckland on Thursday in an effort to reach people who are unable to get to inoculation centres. The Prime Minister says 6 buses will be on the road to start with. The Prime Minister says it will help increase the immunisation rates in Auckland, with hopes in the next week of getting 80% of the eligible population in the city of having had at least 1 shot. And finally, a 19-year-old charged with threatening to kill non-Muslims will keep his identity secret for now after an appearance in the North Shore District Court. He was arrested last week, days after the Lynn Mall attack, and accused of threatening to kill non-Muslims in Auckland between July 13th and September 7th. His name suppression will continue until another court appearance next Thursday. Those are your headlines. Our next news and sport update is at 6.
Kia ora rā e hono mai hoki mai. This is Checkpoint. Ko Lisa Owen tēnei. Ko taku hoa e nai nei. Ko Nona Peltier, who is here to talk business. Nona, let's start with Briscoe's, right? It has posted another record result. Is everyone buying up a storm during lockdown, are they?
They certainly are. Look, their first half profit is up 70% to about $47.5 million. And, you know, that's a very strong result considering, you know, the difficult period we've just been through. Never mind that, their sales are up nearly a quarter as well to $358 million. Now, the homeware sales that you just talked about accounted for about half of its revenue, but the strongest growth was in Rebel Sport. So obviously people want to get fit after sitting around for a while in lockdown, I suppose. But also their online sales now account for about 16% of all of their sales. And the company has done very well through the lockdown period, and even despite the supply disruptions. It's going to raise the hourly wage of its store staff by 6.5% for an hour. That's an hourly rate. And that's mostly because of the competition in the market. They want to make sure they get to keep their staff.
Nona, you say buying sports equipment to maybe get fit, or maybe they're just working off the muffin top from baking a little bit too much during lockdown.
Well, it could be that as well. I don't know about you, Lisa.
House prices, okay, let's talk about them. Only way up, it seems, with house prices is up. So what are the latest numbers?
Look, they're shockers, yep. So the Real Estate Institute has a house price index. It measures the changing value of property in the market. It rose 31.1% in the year ended August. Now, that's a big number, but it is reflective of what we're seeing in terms of prices. So the median price is, it's risen. This is seasonally adjusted number, so 25.7%. That's a very high number. $850,000 is the median house price in New Zealand now. And the increase over the month, so August compared to July, was 2.5%. So obviously it's slowing down, but that's still a big increase when you look at it annually. What's really interesting is the sales volume. Now that's fallen a seasonally adjusted 26.3%. And that is the lowest level of inventory ever recorded by the Real Estate Institute. So the sales fell really close to a third to 12,200. That's a national number. And it really illustrates just how few properties are available on the market for sale. And that's one of the things that's keeping prices up. So it's relentless, isn't it?
And Nona, speaking of numbers, what do you got from the markets?
Interesting. Look, the currency is holding steady, and that's mostly because the world markets are focused on what happens later in the session when the U.S. CPI inflation data is released. And that's going to tell a story about how interest rates might move there sooner or later. So the New Zealand dollar is little changed at 71 U.S. cents, 96.8 Australian and 51.4 pence. And the NZX Top 50 Index, it's down 0.5%. That's a 62-point drop to 13,109.
Thanks, Nona. Nona Peltier with Business News there. The next round of school holidays are looming. Auckland's been shown the light at the end of the tunnel. That's next Tuesday when Cabinet's pencilled in a move to Alert Level 3. But even then, students will still be learning from home for however long Level 3 goes on for. If that runs into the school holidays in just under 3 weeks' time, Auckland parents are facing 9 weeks at home with their kids. That's got some wondering if the school holds should be brought forward.
That would be really helpful because I am worried. We're into week 5 and they've missed 5 weeks of school. And by the time we get out of this, we're going to go into 2 more weeks of holiday. And then we've only got the last term, and the last term is always short. So they haven't got much time to catch up.
Being a teacher, oh my word, I would be very upset if they move the school holidays because I've been working and so have all teachers. We've been working and I know it's challenging for parents. Friends of mine have to work from 8 until 5 online, doing still their work and then still teaching and looking after their kids. So I think they want to have a break. But teachers also want to have a break because we need that as well. We've been working constantly all the time.
Personally, I would like to be on holiday when we're at level 2 so I can take my kids out and about. I think if we have holidays and there's no work for the kids to do, then it's really hard as a parent to keep them engaged and off the devices. So I would prefer them to be having schooling during lockdown and then when the restrictions are eased to be able to get out and about with them. But I have the ability to be with my kids during the holidays. I understand for parents who are working that's incredibly stressful because they are in a position where they now can go back to work except they've got the kids so they can't. So that would be an incredibly stressful situation for those families and businesses.
My husband is home as well, but we're both essential workers, so I work 3 days a week, which means that I don't get schoolwork done for 3 days. And Daddy's trying to work as well, so...
And my daddy is working at home.
But the Prime Minister says it's not as easy as just switching the dates.
It's been under consideration for a while. The complexity, of course, being that that for our teaching workforce, they are working through lockdown, so they continue to work, and then essentially what you'd be asking is for that then to continue on in the aftermath of lockdowns as well. So it's very much, wider considerations around workforce as well.
Te Pirimia Jacinda Ardern, Rotorua is bracing for the prospect of school holidays without lucrative Auckland visitors if the super city stays in super restrictive COVID alert levels. As mentioned, Auckland's in level 4 until at least midnight next Tuesday, when it will shift to level 3. That's barring any nasty surprises. But how long it stays there is anyone's guess, and that means, well, no travel. Ko taku manuhiri in INA, ko Andrew Wilson, the boss of Destination Rotorua, joins me now. Kia ora, Andrew.
Hey, kia ora.
How are businesses coping down your way, and how reliant are they on those Auckland travellers?
Look, they are very worried about the next few months, and at this time of year, hugely reliant on Auckland. It makes up the biggest kind of domestic market for us. So what we're seeing is it's not only Aucklanders, but I think there's a general reluctance probably from a lot of Kiwis not to travel at the moment.
Yeah, tell me about that. So the school holidays aren't that far off. Are you seeing any trends in terms of people who did have holidays booked, and what are people doing and saying?
Yeah, look, we saw certainly quite a few cancellations right at the start of lockdown. And then when we're looking at forward bookings at the moment, things are definitely looking pretty flat. So I think there's certainly, Kiwis over the last probably 12 months have taken a bit more of a last-minute booking type approach. So we're all kind of holding our breath now for what happens with the levels.
And obviously Auckland holding its breath as well, Andrew. Are you seeing cancellations from Aucklanders, or haven't they even booked yet?
I think a lot of them are just holding off, so we haven't necessarily seen the cancellations yet. Hopefully we will continue to see them come through, when the school holidays start on the 1st of October.
So what kind of contingency plans are businesses got? Are they making changes to the way they operate, and if so, what?
Yeah, look, there's probably a couple of lessons learned from the last time we came out of lockdown. So some of the feedback we got from visitors last time was just really understanding who's open and when. So we'll be making sure that on our rotoruanz.com website we've got a really clear kind of list of who's open and any restrictions around times or numbers of people that can come through. We're making sure everyone's kind of dusted off their plans for understanding what best practice looks like for dealing with visitors that are potentially coming from a different alert level. So we know there's obviously some hygiene and other things that need to be managed. And then I know the industry is really encouraging that vaccination rates are lifted right across all their own staff. So that'll certainly be a big push over the next couple of weeks.
So there's been the wage subsidy, and previously there was support for the tourism industry, but is there anything else you want and need in terms of that financial support? We know that other places have had vouchers post-lockdowns. Would you like to see the government do that?
Look, I think one of the things that would be really helpful is a lot of our businesses really kind of struggle with quite a lot of visitors coming through on the weekends, and then not a lot of visitors through the middle of the week. So additional support, maybe to put staff into training for those 2 or 3 days in the midweek period would be fantastic, along with some other support that focuses on how do we kind of rebuild our tourism industry over the next couple of years.
Would it help you if school holidays in different areas were at different times? It's a big discussion at the moment in Auckland.
Yeah, look, it certainly is. And I think there has been one of those discussions that's been kind of going for quite some time about whether or not if the school holidays were split, between North and South Islands or between different areas, that would certainly spread the demand out a bit. And I'm sure there'd be a few operators here that would be very thankful for that.
Do you reckon this lockdown's going to put any of your businesses, out of business?
We always hope that that's not the case, but I know that, after 18 months, there's certainly a few that are really close to the wire. So, and there's, this is a really important sort of time of year for us, and I wouldn't be surprised if there were some that this is just a step too far.
OK, we're giving you a platform here, Andrew. Aucklanders who are looking outward in the vain hope that they may be able to travel soon. Sell us. What should we come and see in Rotorua if we get out of the pound?
Well, certainly you should come down and you should check out our lakefront, which is most of the way through a pretty amazing upgrade. So if you haven't seen the Rotorua lakefront in a while, it's definitely worth a visit. You should definitely stop past all of our amazing eateries, and I know all of our tourism operators are I really am waiting to show the manaakitanga that they're all really famous for. So certainly make the time to stop and have a chat to them. They're all really friendly and they're all really keen to engage in the yarn and make sure that you really feel like you're part of our whānau.
Ka pai, Andrew. That is Andrew Wilson, the boss of Destination Rotorua. It is 13 minutes to 6. I'm Lisa Owen and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. He muriaki e ngā pitapita kōrero. After the news at 6, we jump on board Jabba, the bus, cruising the streets of regional Victoria and soon to roll onto the streets of Auckland. After nearly 12 weeks of lockdown in Sydney, predictions of a flattening curve are giving hope to millions living under restrictions. There was just over 1,100 cases in New South Wales today, but some epidemiologists say slowing transmission rates are a sign things are looking up, while others argue the peak in cases is still weeks away, but say the city is moving in the right direction. The ABC's Stephanie Smale reports.
You can't blame Sydney-siders for looking for any signs of good news right now, and today's infection figures of 1,127 come strangely as a ray of sunshine in their COVID-laden cloud. But should they be preparing for a socially distanced parade just yet? Epidemiologist Raina McIntyre doesn't think so.
Well, nothing's changed in the restrictions, right? We've had the same restrictions essentially since August, and that hasn't flattened the curve. The numbers have gradually kept increasing. The problem is the virus doesn't recognise geographic boundaries. It's going to spread, when there's mixing of people, whether it's people working in different areas.
The New South Wales COVID figures do appear to be stabilising, but Professor McIntyre says her modelling indicates case numbers won't be decreasing dramatically anytime soon.
Our model estimates there'll still be numbers in the high thousands by the middle of October at the time we're releasing restrictions. And that really will determine how much of an upsurge we'll see after releasing restrictions. So it's really important the numbers go right down. The Doherty model, for example, assumed there'd be 30 cases a day at the time you relax restrictions, and clearly we're nowhere near that.
But there is room for optimism. University of Queensland virologist Kirsty Short said Sydney's latest case numbers are looking promising.
But we do have to be wary that a few days does not necessarily a trend make. Certainly the epidemiological modelling is suggesting that the peak will happen a little bit later.
Dr Short says any 24-hour period that avoids a major spike in cases is a success.
The thing that we should focus on is, provided the cases aren't dramatically going up every day, that's buying us more time to get more people vaccinated. So no matter what, whether it's the peak or not the peak, it's really good news.
Kirsty Short says debate about whether or not the curve is flattening shouldn't overshadow the fact the lockdown is saving lives every day.
I think it's probably not the most important take-home message. I understand that people who've gone through a long period of lockdown like those in Sydney would like some really good news and some really clear evidence that what they're doing is working. But we do know what they're doing is working, because every day that they even prevent the numbers from going up dramatically, they're saving lives and again buying more time for people to get vaccinated.
Hey, a lot of your feedback coming in here on whether we should incentivise people to get a vaccination. Steel and Tube offering $150 to its workers, shares in the company, or a contribution to their KiwiSaver if they do get double vaccinated by mid-November. Malcolm says, I have the perfect incentive for the vaccine hesitant. Instead of Googling vaccine dangers, check out the effects on those people lying sick in hospital. You can face possible death, long COVID, and possibly the loss of your job. What more incentive do you need? Or is greed the order of the day, says Malcolm? Justin, an employer, says to Dave and Duncan on Waiheke, I will pay all my staff the $150. I have one anti-vaxxer. He's likely to be bought for $150 for the common good, says Justin. Jean from Auckland reckons if as many people as possible are vaccinated, then maybe we spend less time in lockdown and save our families from being sick. Seems like an incentive to me. Appreciate your point of view, Jean. Totally understand that, and it is a motivator for some people, but we've still got a lot of people out there who aren't vaccinated. I think it's about 33% yesterday fully vaccinated. We need to get the numbers up, don't we? So how do we do it? Another person says, offer a McDonald's voucher for every vaccine and you'd get a good lot of teenage boys in. Michael says, what about a ticket to the All Blacks' next home game? Great incentive. I'm interested in people's feedback on that one, Michael. And then someone else says, paying people to get vaccinated is insulting. Do we really think that will sell their opinion and stance for New Zealand $150? Well, do keep your feedback coming. Text us on 2101. You can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ or email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. While Auckland remains in level 4 lockdown, the rest of the country is enjoying the relative freedoms of level 2. And with that, for many people, it means going back to the office. Hamish Cardwell hit the streets in the capital to find out if workers have come back.
Level 2 and lucky for some.
The moment we first got back after level 2, it's just been crazy, non-stop. Some of the stylists have been working every single day since, no breaks. Yeah, it's just been madness, absolute madness.
Saddle & Co Hairdressers is in the heart of Suitsville, the terrace in the capital CBD, and manager Harold Coots says it is humming. Hairdresser Joe is loving being back at the salon.
Obviously having like 3 weeks off doing nothing, there's only so much wine you can drink until you're like, just a bit tired and fed up and need to get back into a routine. So yeah, I'm enjoying it.
Unity Books manager Adrian Hardingham says there's a huge amount of pent-up demand.
We've been very busy and lots of people coming in, lots of sales. It's been good.
This similar to a non-lockdown period, for example?
Initially it was a bit better than a non-lockdown, and now we're travelling just a little bit above a non-lockdown period. But that doesn't make up for those weeks in level 4, of course.
And there is a dark side. RNZ spoke to a number of retail businesses on Lambton Quay who didn't want to be named. They say most of the public servants haven't returned to the CBD, and the new mask and signing in rules are keeping other customers away. One said retailers have remortgaged their houses to get loans to keep themselves afloat. Lucy Sewer at fashion retailer Superette says there's definitely fewer people around.
Definitely have noticed a huge drop in foot traffic, but in saying that, the people who are coming in are kind of wanting to spend money. They're coming in with purpose, a lot more purpose, which is really, really cool to see.
William Bridewell Roberts from Swimsuit Coffee off Cuba Street in the entertainment district says its customer numbers are starting to return to normal.
People are excited to hang out and all that kind of thing. You saw that on Saturday, it was just like we were just heaving all day, so yeah, it was good.
But back up on the terrace, in the heart of the public sector offices, hospitality businesses say they're struggling. Frank's Cafe General Manager Oisin Tegler explains.
So at level 2 and even to a certain extent level 3, we were at about 60% of what we were doing beforehand. Yeah, it's definitely just there's no people in town.
RNZ understands that some public sector staff are furious they're being ordered back into the office. Monica says whilst she's been given both options, she was happy to return to the city.
But everyone was happy to come back. If you didn't want to or didn't feel comfortable or safe, you definitely had the option to stay and then keep working from home.
Simon Arkis from Wellington's Chamber of Commerce says surveys show under the previous lockdown level 2, between 60 and 70% of businesses could operate as usual. While there's no new data, he expects this time around Delta will make for a slower return to normal.
The big thing is that we want government workers to return to the office as soon as possible and as regularly as possible because they do sustain that inner city health. It's not all on the government, but it is important that those workers, when they feel safe and when they're able to, come back into the city and keep it vibrant.
The Finance Minister Grant Robertson says as the Wellington Central MP, he wants public servants to start returning to the office this week.
More than 1 million people came together today to share a moment in Te Reo Māori. It's Te Wiki o Te Reo Māori, Māori Language Week. And the moment is one of the week's pinnacle events. Jamie Tahana reports.
Kei te pehe koe, kei te pai au.
There was animation.
Kei te pehe koe, kei te ia kai au.
Waiata. Stories.
Ka kino aspa ko te wā kai, ka hira nei ia.
Kōrero, company quizzes, and torture. Burpees to poie. Across the motu at midday, more than 1 million people took time out for a moment in te reo Māori. It was organised by Te Taurāwhiti, the Māori Language Commission. Its chief executive, Ngāhiwi Apanui, says the numbers who took part this year are already rocketing past last year's record.
We had over 1.1 million people register, but more importantly than that, in the first hour, we received over 2,000 uploads of people doing their various celebrations of the Māori language moment. So we've been really, really stoked. So the engagement is well up on what it was last year.
That's something Mr Apanui says is phenomenal, considering the position the country's in.
Given the impact of COVID, we're in lockdown for much of the last 6 weeks. And also Tāmaki Makaurau, Auckland is still in lockdown. I think our people have adapted really, really well, and it was been a brilliant celebration.
Upper Hutt Primary School won the award last year for their standard of participation. And they were back at it this year. Their kaiako, Shanice Tredrea, says it was important the school took part. Her students had been learning about the journey of te reo and the language petition of 1972.
We just want to revitalise that language, and looking at the newspapers, it looks like we're going from surviving to thriving, which is amazing, and we just really want to push that kaupapa.
She says the turnout was fantastic.
They were really excited about it. Yeah, every child has been connecting with te reo Māori, regardless of whether they whakapapa.
Te Taurāwhiti says the uploads are still happening and the final tally will be known at the end of the week. Closing in on 1.2 million so far, they might fall short of the 2 million world record they'd hoped for. But Ngāhiwi Apanui says he's still happy. It just leaves a goal for next year.
A lot of you have been getting in touch about the school holidays and potentially moving them, with Auckland in level 4 and people maybe not be able to go anywhere. This listener says our school holidays should not, capital letters, be decided on whether people with lots of money can go skiing to make profits for private ski fields. This is not what teachers want and will not benefit the majority of students. Another listener shares pretty similar views. Elite businesses and overpriced tourism is not the priority over teachers and student learning. Wanaka needs a new business model. Someone else says, childhood is so short. Relish your children being at home. Mine have already gone. Only one precious 11-year-old left, soon to be gone as well. I want to spend as much time as I can with her, says Mandy. And another person says, totally agree with cancelling the October school holidays. My 8 and 10-year-old boys needs to catch up.
Ahi Māori RNZ News at 6, ko Sarah Thompson tōko ingoa. The car of a man who's been missing with 3 of his children for 4 days was found on a remote Waikato beach with waves crashing into it. Searchers are combing the coast near Marokopa for 34-year-old Thomas Phillips, 5-year-old Amber, 6-year-old Maverick and 8-year-old Jada. Area Commander Will Loughran says the disappearance is out of character and there's no suggestion of foul play.
A family member last spoke to Thomas on the family farm in Marokopa, and that was on Saturday evening. There was no issues raised at the time.
Will Loughran says Thomas Phillips lives at the family farm in Marokopa and has another property in Otorohanga. The microbiologist Susie Wiles is encouraging Aucklanders to hold their nerve and not be swayed by the growing pessimism about lockdown. ACT leader David Seymour has suggested giving up on the elimination strategy if things do not improve this week. But Wiles says the alternative of people dying and filling up hospitals, as in New South Wales, would be far worse.
We just need to all keep our eye on the prize. I worry that the more people start talking about, you can't do this, the more people start to believe it. And I don't think it's true.
Susie Wiles says it's far too early to abandon a strategy that has served the country well to date. The Cancer Control Agency is urging anyone with possible cancer symptoms to still see a doctor, lest cases go undiagnosed. Te Aho o Te Kahu says there is plenty of capacity in the health system for checking people at every alert level. Its chief executive, Diana Sarfati, says that during the first national lockdown in April last year, the number of diagnoses plunged by about 45%.
If you have any signs or symptoms that are unusual or unexpected, do go and seek health advice. The health system is still there and still working. If you need to go to hospital, the hospital is still the safest place to be, and we want your health to be as good as it can possibly be. So don't delay.
Diana Sarfati says cancer treatment is also continuing at all alert levels. KiwiBank customers are still having problems accessing their online banking. ANZ and New Zealand Post experienced denial of service attacks last week, but KiwiBank has yet to say what is behind its problems. It said yesterday it had fixed the issue, but sent out a message today saying it expects access to internet banking and its app to be intermittent. Israel's new Prime Minister, Naftali Bennett, has described talks with Egypt's President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi as positive. It was the first official trip to Egypt by an Israeli leader for a decade. The BBC's Yolanda Nell reports.
For President Sisi, this was a chance to reassert Egypt's regional role, while Israel's Prime Minister, just months into his job, was looking to show himself as a statesman. At the end of the meeting, Naftali Bennett spoke of the deep connection between the two countries. While trade and international developments were discussed, Cairo said that ways and efforts to revive the peace process between Israel and the Palestinians were also on the agenda. Any imminent return to peace talks seems unlikely, but this summit was expected to look at ways to shore up a truce that Egypt helped to broker between Israel and Hamas militants in May to end 11 days of fighting and reconstruction in the Gaza Strip.
More bones have been stolen from an historic camp and museum site near Milford Sound. Guns Camp is on Hollyford Road, about 40 kilometres from the Sound. It was severely damaged during heavy flooding in February 2020 and has been closed ever since. The police in Southland say that sometime after the flood, possibly between July 19th and August 5th this year, hip, leg and foot bones held together by wire were taken. Anyone with information about their whereabouts is asked to call 105. Moving now into sports news, All Blacks hooker Cody Taylor says he's grateful for the modern rules on concussion, even though it meant he missed the weekend's victory over Argentina. Taylor and flanker Adi Savea both missed the game after suffering head knocks in the win over the Wallabies the week before. Taylor says the new protocols are stricter, but he's happy with that.
Back in the day, probably would have had to just roll on up again and play the next week. But if I'm being 100% honest, I wouldn't have been absolutely right leading into that week of prep. I came right before the game, which is awesome. But if those protocols weren't in place, then you're probably jumping straight into the first training and then putting yourself at risk even more.
Meanwhile, Quade Cooper's hopes of acquiring Australian citizenship are finally set to be realised thanks to a change in eligibility rules. The New Zealand-born Wallabies fly half, who moved to Australia as a teenager, has earned 71 test caps, but his citizenship applications have been repeatedly declined. And finally, British teenager Emma Raducanu's US Tennis Open triumph could lead to a pot of gold worth as much as $40 million over the next 2 years. Sports marketing experts believe the earnings potential of Britain's first female Grand Slam champion in 44 years is set to skyrocket. Forbes magazine estimates Japan's Naomi Osaka has earned $70 million off the court in the past year, and tennis players make up 9 of the world's 10 highest paid sportswomen. And that's the news.
Tonight on Nights, Tony Stamp samples music from the latest Flying Nun signee, Sulphate. Samoa's parliament is sitting for the first time since its change of government. Roy Hawkins has the details. And our philosopher Anne Kerwin discusses Michael Sandel's latest book, The Tyranny of Merit, a critique of meritocracy. But if we're not going to put our faith in hard work and talent, what do we believe in? That's Nights with me, Brian Crump, after the news at 7 on RNZ National.
Te reo irirangi o Aotearoa, on air, online and on demand. Now the short forecast from Met Service to midnight Rāapa Wednesday. Northland to Coromandel Peninsula and Bay of Plenty. Periods of rain with heavy falls possible in Northland tomorrow evening. Waikato to Taranaki, including the central high country. Fine spells today with remaining rain in Waikato and Taupo clearing this afternoon. Periods of rain tomorrow. For Gisborne and Hawke's Bay, it'll be periods of rain, especially in Gisborne. For Whanganui to Wellington, also Wairarapa. Fine spells with a few showers in Wellington and Wairarapa. Cloud increasing tomorrow and rain developing everywhere by evening. Nelson, Marlborough, Buller and Fiordland Island will see a few showers about Marlborough and southern Fiordland, fine elsewhere, but isolated showers about northwest Nelson and Buller this afternoon or evening. Canterbury will see fine spells with a few showers clearing overnight. Otago and Southland will be partly cloudy with isolated showers retreating to the south coast this afternoon. And the Chatham Islands will see a few showers. That concludes the short forecast from Met Service to midnight Rapa Wednesday. It's 7 minutes past 6.
Nā mihi Sarah, no mai hoki mai. If you're just joining us, this is Checkpoint. Ko Lisa Owen tēnei. COVID numbers have taken a bit of a slide today with 15 new cases in the community, all in Auckland. There are now 970 cases linked to the Delta outbreak, but almost 400 of those people have recovered. Only 10 cases from the past fortnight are yet to be epidemiologically linked. The Director General of Health, Dr. Ashley Bloomfield, says the drop in numbers of cases reported today is encouraging and indicates Auckland is on track to eliminate the virus. He says the new infections come out of households which already had a case, with the majority linked to just 3 homes.
We do know, of course, that Delta spreads more easily within households, so to some extent, these new cases were expected. While some of these houses have not yet been epi-linked to the wider outbreak, they have not popped up unexpectedly.
The government is pushing to increase vaccination levels in Auckland this week. Te Peremia, Jacinda Ardern, says up to 220,000 doses can be delivered in the region in the coming days. It's rolling out Mr. Whippy-style mobile vaccine buses from Thursday to try and reach that target.
The initial plan is to take them into areas where we know vaccination numbers have been low or people have not been able to access vaccination services as easily. The aim is to increase the network from an expected 6 on Thursday to 12 over the coming weeks. A huge thanks to Auckland Airport and Bus Travel New Zealand, who have supplied buses for this work. I know in Australia they've started operating something similar and have named their mobile outreach clinics Jabba the Bus. I'm sure that we can do better.
And we'll have more on Jabba the Bus in a moment from those behind the wheel. So Auckland parents are staring down weeks of homeschooling in the prospect of school holidays spent under strict COVID rules preventing travel. Auckland's in level 4 until at least midnight next Tuesday, when it will shift to level 3, that's barring any nasty surprises. The term break starts at the end of September, but Auckland families could be stuck with a staycation if the super city remains under super tight travel restrictions. So is shifting the holidays an option? Joining me now is Auckland Primary Principals Association President Stephen Lethbridge. Kia ora, Stephen.
Ahi Marie, Lisa.
So what do teachers think of this idea of potentially moving the holidays?
Hey, look, this came as a bit of a surprise to us. The first we heard of it was a question at the Prime Minister's announcement yesterday. So for the duration of the lockdown, we've been pretty firm that the holidays would be as normal. So we took the opportunity yesterday to talk with the primary school and intermediate schools in Auckland, and look, 93% of primary and intermediate schools want the holidays to remain the same.
And why is that? What's their thinking behind it?
Look, I think that what we're seeing is we've been here before. We had early holidays last year, and what we can see is that schools remember having a very, very long term after those early holidays, and children's energy level, teachers' energy really dropped off towards the end of that long term. So we really want to hit the ground running and have a really great end to what has been a very messy year.
I suppose the logic that some parents are applying is this, that they have been homeschooling for a number of weeks. By the time they get to the school holidays, they will be pretty fatigued. And then those school holidays could potentially be kind of, they could be locked down for those school holidays as well. So the holidays look no different and feel no different to the homeschooling situation. Can you kind of understand their predicament?
Yeah, look, we are really grateful to all of the parents in the Auckland region, all of the families that are helping out with remote learning. It's a really challenging and difficult time. But what we really think needs to happen is But if people are finding it challenging, talk to your local school about how you're experiencing remote learning. Holidays, we still don't know the alert level status and what the alert level status will be, whether it moves next week or the week after. So playing around with holiday dates doesn't give us certainty that we need. There's been a lot of planning going into making sure that we can track to the end of the current school term effectively through remote learning, and lots of schools have put plans in place for next term. So changing things around is a pretty tricky option for schools.
So you touched on this, but I'm interested in how you can achieve it. You talked about if you're finding it hard, get in touch. How do you take pressure off everybody? What are the solutions? Have shorter days at school? Don't go to as many lessons online? Or what actually, practically, can you do to take the pressure off parents and the kids, as well as teachers?
Across the region, there are schools principals have been reporting to us that some parents who are finding things challenging at home, who are having to work and do and work from home, but also do home learning with their kids. There are many options that schools have in place. Some of them have just-in-time learning, where they've recorded things and put them up online. Some of them have hard packs that have been distributed. So, trying to take the learning across and spread it out across the day. The best thing to do is talk to individual schools, because they know their communities, they know what's going on, and they are the best source of information for help.
Hey, Stephen, do you think one positive thing is that there's now more love for teachers from parents?
Hey, look, I think what's happened, we're a team of 5 million. It's a bit of a cliche, but everyone is walking in the shoes of a teacher at the moment. And yes, this is our life every day of the year. We love it. It's the best job in the world. And parents are experiencing the joys and the frustrations of what it is to be a teacher as well.
Appreciate your time, Stephen. That's Stephen Lethbridge, who's the Auckland Primary Principals Association president there. It is almost 6:15. You're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. For the past few months here at Checkpoint, we've been asking various ministers if a mobile Mr. Whippy-style ice cream van could be the answer to getting more people vaccinated. Well, today it became a reality, with the Prime Minister announcing mobile vaccination buses would be launched from this Thursday to deliver jabs to people at home who haven't been able to get to a vaccination centre. Jacinda Ardern said the buses would look a bit like Jabba the Bus, a mobile vaccination bus launched in regional Victoria last week. Well, joining us now from Victoria is Dr. Helen Roberts from the Goulburn Valley Health, which has launched the bus. Hi, Helen. What can you tell us about Jabba and how it works?
Hi, Lisa. Jabba. It's quite special, isn't it, really? So our mobile vaccination hub is basically a town bus that we've adapted to create a 3-pod setup inside, so we can vaccinate 3 people at a time during normal business. So that's probably about 200 people a day. And as the weather gets better in regional Victoria, that can expand to probably double that by using the outside space and the areas under trees and marquees for people to sit outside for that 15 minutes of observation.
So, Helen, who are your main targets here, right? And how far afield are you going to try and get people on board, literally and figuratively?
Yeah, so our local public health unit stretches about 2 hours drive out from our centre, which is here in Shepparton. And who we're targeting initially are those people that, for social or geographical reasons, are finding it difficult to get to a vaccination centre. So we're taking it to them. We are doing multiple places in one day and picking up probably 50 or so people at each stop. People are able to make their reservation for a vaccination on the bus in collaboration with lots of our community services that are really leading that in-reach into community to encourage people to come forward and be vaccinated with us.
So, Helen, OK, you can make an appointment, but also if someone sees your bus cruising the streets, are they able just to rock up and say, hey, have you got time to give me a vaccination?
Not just yet. It'll take a little bit of a setup once you park in wherever you're going to park. Today it was a caravan park when I cruised past them there. Happily parked under a tree with people sat outside and having a cup of tea after their vaccinations. But in the future, when we have hit some of these communities directly. We will then be targeting postcodes that have had low uptake of vaccinations and inviting everyone that lives nearby to come on board and get vaccinated.
Who came up with the idea and how?
So it's really unashamedly stolen from the UK, which is where I'm from, to be perfectly honest. Sitting around over morning tea, we were thinking about what we can do to develop our programme, given that we have a wide area to cover. And the bus seemed just the most sensible thing to do, to take the vaccination to the people. You know, what I want is it to be harder to not be vaccinated than be vaccinated. And geography and distance is one of those things that is a barrier for some people.
So is it just the one bus at the moment?
One at the moment. I'd like a fleet. And it seems that it's caught the interest of many different people. There are already a few more on board and getting ready to launch their own buses in Victoria. So I've got a whole host of awesome names that the rest of our fleet can have.
Well, that is the thing. Let's be honest. Part of the attention has to be because the name, right? Jabba the Bus.
Absolutely.
Where did this come from and why?
So it was named by Viv Jeffrey, who's one of our project leads at Goulburn Valley Health. We thought Jabba the Bus was perfect. Why not? We've thrown around other names, so the Vaccinator, the COVID Buster, with appropriate theme tune, but my favourite for number 2 is going to be the Pfizer Bus, and I'd also like the Venga Boys theme tune to be playing out from the speakers whilst we're vaccinating, but I'm not sure that'll get that over the line.
Helen, when you rock up and Jabba the Bus, are you blasting out Star Wars music or what's the deal?
Oh, God, wouldn't it be great? Wouldn't it be great? Not yet, but, you know, we're only on week 2. Let's see what week 3 brings.
Lovely to talk to you, Helen. All the best with the project. That is Dr. Helen Roberts, who is, from Victoria. And they've got their very own Jabba the Bus, and we are going to have one too. What are we going to call it, though? So, get in touch. Text us on 2101, tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ, and the best ideas we'll pass on to those people who may have some say. Now, in the UK, an inquiry into the cause of the Grenfell Tower fire has been told incompetence and a total neglect of safety were at the heart of the disaster. The tower inferno 4 years ago killed 72 people. A lawyer for the victims said the refurbishment of the 20-storey apartment block was hastily conceived by an inept design team. The BBC's Tom Simmons reports.
For months, the public inquiry has been examining the refurbishment of Grenfell Tower, which still stands charred in West London. Before the fire in 2016, a cladding system was added to make the building warmer and more waterproof. The aluminium sheets and insulation boards used allowed the flames to spread. Barrister Stephanie Barwise represents victims of the fire, and summing up the evidence, she said 2 contractors, Ryden and Harley, had provided a cladding system built from combustible materials to keep costs down. She added that specialist fire engineers and local council building inspectors failed to warn of the risks. The materials used were falsely marketed as safe for tall buildings, she said, by the metals multinational Arconic, along with the insulation manufacturers Kingspan in Ireland and Celotex, owned by a French company. The architects firm involved, Studio E, were inept, she claimed. A barrister for Studio E said it had not been told of the risks by the experts it had worked on during the project. Following Grenfell, safety issues were found in buildings all over Britain. Studio E said the fact that these would have been designed by a wide range of architects showed its work had not departed from the norm and that inadequate building codes had played a part. The inquiry is due to stretch into next year and is being shadowed by a police investigation.
On incentives to vaccinate, some of you still getting in touch. This is the earlier interview we did with Steel and Tube. They're offering $150 cash to workers who get double vaccinated by the deadline of mid-November, or they can get a contribution to their KiwiSaver or shares in the company. Steve says, good on you, Steel and Tube. Great example being set by this New Zealand company. Another person says, an incentive is great. Even though I'm already partially vaccinated, I don't begrudge the incentive to others if that's what it takes. We all win when more people are jabbed. Well, let's head to New York now, where it's back to the classroom for all students. For the first time since last year. In the States, people now have to show proof of vaccinations to enter restaurants, gyms or entertainment venues. CNN's Athena Jones reports on the trip back to school.
This is the day we have been waiting for.
A pivotal day in New York City as people of all ages face new requirements aimed at beating back COVID-19. And many of the city's municipal employees return to their workplaces.
You're going to remember in the history of this city, this day, September 13th, 2021, a day that was a game changer.
Proof of vaccination or a negative COVID test now required at indoor restaurants, bars, gyms, and entertainment venues, with companies that don't enforce the rule facing fines. Children under 12, too young to be vaccinated, will have to mask up. Same goes for the nation's largest school district, where all students and teachers must be masked as full-time in-person learning begins. And all public school employees must receive at least one dose of vaccine by September 27th. Meanwhile, at least 7 schools in Fulton County, Georgia, reverted to virtual learning today due to a spike in COVID cases, with the CDC director warning of the Delta variant.
I would say dangerous is more transmissible, right? If it is more transmissible, we have more kids with disease, we have more kids with symptomatic disease, and more kids ending up in the hospital.
Experts say widespread mandates could be key to ending the pandemic.
I think that if you get trusted public messengers who put aside political ideologies and convince people to get vaccinated, the other way to do it is to have many, many more mandates.
One reason President Biden announced companies with more than 100 employees must require they be vaccinated or tested weekly.
We've heard a lot of feedback from the Business Roundtable and others that this will help create safer workplaces.
But blowback was swift.
The problem is that I'm trying to overcome resistance, but the president's actions in a mandate hardens the resistance.
And after too many maternity ward staffers at one upstate New York hospital quit over vaccination requirements, a stunning step.
We are unable to safely staff the service after September 24th. The number of resignations received leaves us no choice but to pause delivering babies at Lewis County General Hospital.
Britain's first tennis Grand Slam champion for 44 years and destined to be a global superstar. But Emma Raducanu is insisting she's not thinking too far ahead and is just taking the success in her stride. The $3.5 million she's taking away after winning the US Open could soon be dwarfed by the sums being mentioned in marketing circles, where she's being described as a solid gold prospect. The BBC's Dan Rowan reports.
Having conquered the US Open, Britain's newest sporting superstar proving a hit on American TV earlier, the biggest networks queuing up to speak to the teenage tennis sensation.
If you just do the best you can with every single day, time flies and you can really achieve anything with inner belief.
Raducanu's been thrown into the spotlight in a way no one predicted after producing one of sport's greatest ever fairy tales. But today, a British Grand Slam winner from a different era warned that the youngster's newfound fame would need to be carefully managed.
She has the potential to be a world number one and a multiple Grand Slam champion. We've got to give her time to develop. And if it doesn't happen within the next 12 months, it probably will happen in the 12 months after that. And we've got to protect her because her world, it's going to hit her like a sledgehammer. I don't think she realises what's coming her way.
Having sprung from relative obscurity just a few weeks ago, Raducanu's now one of the world's most marketable athletes.
大家好，我想说谢谢.
The teenager, whose mother is Chinese, thanking fans in fluent Mandarin, the latest sign of her global appeal.
I think quite quickly her sponsorship earnings off the court will dwarf her prize money on the court. She is the most marketable British athlete since David Beckham because she is the complete package. She's young, she's already winning millions of social media followers, which increases her influence as a brand. She has a multicultural background, and she won her Grand Slam in America, one of the most important consumer markets in the world.
Here at the LTA's headquarters, tennis chiefs insist much more investment is still needed into publicly available park courts and indoor facilities like this one, if Raducanu's success is to translate into a much-needed surge in participation. But there's no doubt the women's game has just had its biggest boost in decades. Raducanu's hit the big time here in the Big Apple, basking in her newfound fame. And if the pitfalls and pressure that can accompany such attention are avoided, there seems no limit to the impact that she can have.
Oh, we're getting a lot of suggestions for this bus. We'll get to those in a second. On university cheating, though, this person says buying assignments, having someone else sign in for your exam, all these things have been happening for 20 years that I know of. I was head of a school some years ago. Cheating was rife. I used to know the price of an assignment written from scratch and a recycled one. Even when I was a lecture tutor, I was discouraged from challenging a student's obvious plagiarism. I left the industry in disgust when I was told I had no choice but to engage in fraudulent behaviour to pass students who had not met standards. On the school holidays, Jen, who's in Auckland, reckons if you moved the holidays forward, it's not like teachers wouldn't get a break, Jen says. They'd get their break 2 weeks early while we're all in level 3. Then when we move to level 2, term 4 starts. It's a slightly longer term, but they would have a slightly shorter term 3. Understand what you're saying, Jen, but, you know, that means all of their holidays will spent basically not being able to leave the house. And I don't wonder if that's fair or not. On the subject of the vaccination bus, okay, Jabberwocker. It's got an intergalactic tone, this person says. I reckon that one's pretty good. Vaxi taxi. Yeah, I'll take that one. And there's more than one person who has suggested Jabberwocker. Steve reckons COVID bus tour. See what he did there. What about this one? Well, yeah, this is obviously stemming from the old school Mr. Whippy. Someone's suggesting Mr. Pricky. Not sure what we think of that one. And Jaffa's the bus. Suppose that works if they're in Auckland. Max has got in touch to say for his bus, he would like roll up your green sleeves. Yeah. And what music would we play for that? The same tune that you get on the Mr. Whippy wagon or something different? And someone from clearly down in Wellington has got in touch to say that for their area, Jabba the Hutt would be a goer. Yeah, Jabba the Hutt, like that one too. Do keep those coming. Text us. Even when we go off air, we're interested. 2101, tweet us at checkpoint.rnz or send us an email and we will pass them on. And remember, the bus is on the road from Thursday. Yes, I'm just getting told, on the road from Thursday. And there's actually going to be 6 of them to start off with, so we need some more names. So keep them rolling through. Late news team's going to keep you up to date through the night. Ko te kaupapa tuatahi o Pōpō. Tomorrow from 5, that's first up, they're speaking to university students stranded in Auckland in lockdown and unable to return to universities around the country. Kaua e wareware te atatero I a mātou kōrero. Don't forget, you can check out all our stories and videos. We put them up online, so it's a good place to go if you want to do catch-up. Kei te hoki mai anō a Pōpō whānau, Paul Mārie. Back tomorrow, same time, same place.
Kia ora tātou, RNZ News headlines at 6:30. Ko Sarah Thompson tōku ingoa. The car of a man who's been missing with 3 of his children for 4 days was found on a remote Waikato beach on Sunday with waves crashing into it. There are just 15 new community cases of COVID-19 today, all linked to existing cases in Tāmaki Makaurau. The microbiologist Susie Wiles says it's far too early to abandon the elimination strategy and is encouraging Aucklanders to hold their nerve. And the Cancer Control Agency says treatment is continuing at all alert levels and urges anyone with possible cancer symptoms to still see a doctor. Those are your headlines. Our next news update is at 7.
It's BBC Prom season, and on RNZ Concert we're doing our bit to bring you coverage of the best bits. From 6 weeks of concerts at London's Royal Albert Hall, tune in to Music Alive Monday to Saturday evenings from 8 o'clock, and over the coming weeks you can enjoy some of the highlights from one of the world's greatest classical music festivals, the BBC Proms, brought to you by RNZ Concert.
Thanks, Cynthia. Love everything about the proms except for the last night. Can't stand that. Total jingoism, Rule Britannia and all that. No, not for me. But all the other nights, fantastic. Great festival of music. And luckily, they've got a whole series of them, not just the last night on the RNZ concert. By the way, I'm Brian Crump, getting ready for another night on RNZ National, which commences after the news at 7. And Kerwin is my first guest, talking about a new book from the Harvard Professor of Philosophy, Michael Sandel, called The Tyranny of Merit. And it's a critique of the meritocracy, the idea that hard work and talent are what should get you ahead. But I kind of think if that's not what we put our faith in, what are we putting our faith in instead? And we'll explain after the news at 7. And this hour, well, later on, something that's been getting a lot of clicks on the website. It's an interview that Kim Hill did with one of the brains behind a website, I think it is, Lucy Blakiston, called Shit You Should Care About, also known as Siska. But first off, the detail.